All right, we'd like to welcome you all to the meeting. At this time, we'd like to ask Councilman Carlson to lead us in a prayer, and then following that, we'll ask STM student Becca Samar to come up and lead us in a pledge.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for this opportunity that we have together here tonight. I pray for your continued leading and guiding over this council and the city and the parish of Lafayette. I pray that you would, in everything that we do, we'd be able to honor you by the decisions that we make. Give us wisdom that we would stand up for you in all that we do. I pray that you would bless this time and this meeting here together. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, at this time, I'd like to call.
Just go to any one of the podiums and pick up the mic.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Becca from STM, sitting in with us tonight. Thank you so much for leading us in the pledge. I'd like to thank my fellow council members, Mr. Carlson, for leading that wonderful prayer. And I'd like to welcome you all to our Lafayette Parish Council meeting. We welcome you to the council meeting. As your presiding officer and chair, I'd like to announce the following. This is a public hearing to address the council on any item on this agenda. We ask that you please fill out the request form and submit it to our clerk prior to the call of the agenda item, or you will not be given an opportunity to speak. We do have staff assistance here that is available if needed. Items for submission to the council should be handed to the council clerk, Ms. Veronica Williams, who is seated to my left and is wearing red. Yeah. Burnt orange. All right. Okay. All right. So look to my left, your right. That's where she's at. When addressing the council, state your name and title for the official record. We do have a 5-minute rule that is in effect. There will be no debating or confrontational statements that will be allowed. The first 2 rows in the front here to my left will be for media only. Food and drinks are not allowed in the auditorium, and at this time we ask that you please silence all electronic devices, cell phones. Meeting procedures are by resolution and not by Robert's Rules of Order. All documents with reference to meetings can be found on the LCG website. And finally, the council encourages your involvement in boards or commissions. If you are interested, we ask that you call 291-8800. Moving along to chair announcements. At this time, I'd like to wish council member and vice chair a happy birthday, which he will be celebrating on February 29th. Happy birthday, Mr. Gilbo.
Thank you. And just for the record, I'm only 18 years old, the youngest serving council member.
What? Were you young?
Thank you.
You put that when you qualified?
Yeah. No, I didn't.
Happy birthday. Hope you have
The
a great
media missed that one.
All right. Also to announce that there will be a special joint meeting of the Lafayette Parish Council and the City Council following this meeting. At this time, I will move to council announcements. Clear. Just hit. There you go. We hit done. There you go. Okay. Councilman A.B. Rubin, you have the floor, sir.
Welcome, everyone. Tonight, I want to make an announcement that we will be having our 6th annual Hoop Dreams, where the kids from the neighborhood get to participate in a basketball game against not only the Lafayette Police Department, but also the Sheriff Department. And what it does, it enables our community to realize that policemen are human also. And we also would like to thank Love Our School for being a title sponsor this year. And if there's any kids out there that would like to participate in 8th grade to 12th grade and play against the policemen, please feel free to meet us at Northside tomorrow at 5 o'clock for practice. Thank you.
Awesome. You playing basketball too?
My wife said I can't play anymore.
Oh, that's.
She
all
took
right.
my basketball court.
I'm too short, so I ain't showing up over there. It's all good. All right, that's done with council announcements. At this time, we're going to move to the executive mayor president's report. At this time, I'd like to recognize our mayor president, Mr. Guillory.
I appreciate you, and also want to, again, say congratulations to one of our STM students, Miss Becca Seymour, who is the daughter of the Honorable Maggie Seymour, serving as a hearing officer I've been to a couple of those, hearing officer in the 16th Judicial District Court in St. Martin, but she's a resident of the great parish of Lafayette. So thank you, Becca. Mr. Chair, I have no announcements at this time. I do have a few items, but I can address it at the joint meeting.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along, we'll move to comments from the public.
Mr. Chair, we do have 4 speakers signed in under comments, the first of which is Takuna El Shabazz, and he will be followed by Kathleen Espinoza.
Okay. Just state your name for the record, sir, and if you could pick the mic, there you go.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. I am Takuna Malana El Shabazz. I'm the author of the book, Black I Am, Cajun Creole, I Am Not. I am also the outreach minister for Imani Temple number 49, and I am the founder and chairperson for CCBE, Conscientious Council of Black Elders, as well as a community activist. A famous black psychologist in the name of Amos Wilson once said, "To manipulate history is to manipulate consciousness. To manipulate consciousness is to manipulate possibilities. To manipulate possibilities is to manipulate power." We believe that this underscores the mindset that is behind the promotion, the reckless and senseless and selfish promotion of Cajun Acadiana. And I will state to you succinctly as to why. Fact, the term nigger and Cajun are historical twin slurs. That is not my opinion. That is a matter of historical fact. Black people are neither niggers or Cajuns. Creole is a historical label given to lighter-skinned black people who were often the offspring of the white slave owners who systematically rape black women and black girls. So for us to identify and to label ourselves doing black history or any other history is nonsense for black people. I don't have much time, so I got a 2-hour presentation that I got to present in 5 minutes. So let me do this. Let me ask you, council people, and the white people that are here, what would your world look like if the circumstances were reversed? If this was an all-black council, or at least one white and the rest black, and we decided as a council that we would go to Africa, perhaps Nigeria, and we would look at the word Nigeria and we would say, hey, you know what? It's okay to be niggers because Nigeria is just missing one G. So we come back and we make everybody and everything of worth fall under the nigger label. And we can't say Southwest Louisiana no more. We got to convert everything to nigger-ana. We got to take away Southwest Louisiana. My question to you is, could black people ask white people to use their tax dollars to put up the nigger dome? You are raging niggers. Wear raging nigger t-shirts. Buy a juicy burger, nigger burger at Burger King. Could we ask the white private sector to buy spicy nigger chicken wings at Popeyes, or buttered nigger biscuits at McDonald's, or send their children to nigger-ana high, or nigger-ana elementary, or perform in the educational system, use millions of dollars to create a nigger emerge program? What is nigger watermelon? Could we get white folks to buy nigger watermelon, nigger rice, nigger sunshine, nigger okra, nigger gumbo? We're so crazy that we even made Jesus a super nigger. Would white folks accept this? No, I don't think so. White rage would swell in 24 hours. But the black community, even during Black History Month, is expected to say to ourselves, don't worry, be happy, because the cultural development is going to affect everybody. But the fact of history states that the historical fact in any group who does not recognize and accept their own historical worth, they create their own barriers for their own political, economic, cultural, and retardation. Black I am, Cajun Creole I am not.
Next speaker, Kathleen Espinoza, followed by Mike Walden.
My name is Kathleen Espinoza. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters of Lafayette, and I'm here to speak to you. We are asking the Lafayette Parish Council to better accommodate early voting beginning in the next federal election cycle this fall of 2020 and years going forward. I want to thank Councilman Gilbo for meeting with us and for inviting us here to share this information with you. The League observed numerous problems back in the early voting cycle in 2016, which was the highest early voting turnout to date in Lafayette Parish. I do want to say that as a new parish council, you are, as the parish governing authority, it fits squarely under your responsibility to ensure the early voting infrastructure, that it's fully accessible and adequate for the turnout. So some of the things that we observed at the courthouse annex, which of course is the only early voting site in Lafayette Parish, the interior evacuation stairwell, which is used all at the same time, the primary means of access to the voting machines, which are on the 3rd floor, the waiting line to vote, and the primary exit for all who have already voted, use the same stairwell. The small lobby on the ground floor is overcrowded and includes voters in wheelchairs or on walkers or canes, waiting for 2 small elevators, people exiting the elevators, security guards, people entering and exiting the stairwell, and people coming in the main entrance. It would be a terrible thing if for some reason there was an emergency evacuation during an early voting period, given those kinds of conditions. In 2016, there was no handicapped accessible parking with an accessible route into the building from the street. We do thank the Lafayette Consolidated Government for working to remedy this issue since the 2016 election. However, there still is insufficient accessible parking near the location, and many paths of travel on downtown sidewalks remain inaccessible. Also, the Buchanan Street parking garage has been closed, making parking that much more difficult downtown. Lafayette Parish is now the 5th most populated parish in the state. The city of Lafayette alone is the 4th most populated city. In contrast, for elections, Orleans, Jefferson, and St. Tammany parishes have 3 or 4 early voting sites. 11 other parishes smaller in population than Lafayette, including St. Martin and St. Mary parishes, have more than 1 early voting site. Steps that are necessary for you as a parish council to add another early voting site. You have to provide for a temporary branch office for the registrar by resolution. I've attached to you a sample MOU that was provided to us by Representative Coussant, who has also met with us on a couple of occasions. You do have to provide funding for the registrar or direct payment for the equipment, operation, and supply costs identified by the registrar of voters. I've also attached a sample budget for a large early voting site as well as a small early voting site. And so you do have to provide funding for that. And then, of course, you have to reimburse the Secretary of State's office for costs associated with the data circuit line. I also attached an image of likely early voters across the parish. So it's just a very simple map that I generated that you are able to see that you have likely early voters distributed across the parish. And so I think the need is clearly expressed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Councilman Gilbo.
Ms. Espinoza, I appreciate you and the league for bringing this issue to not only me, but I understand other council members, Nanette Cook and Mr. Carlson, have also had some discussion. I don't think anyone would deny the need for one or possibly two more early voting sites. I don't think they would argue. Certainly, you're arguing about the current facility. It's just not doable. I mean, it's got some issues. I would hope that we could look into this, and I have made contact with Jean-Paul Cousson, and he is working with me and the other members of the delegation to see if they can't find fundings. I have identified a source, and he's looking into it, and it's called HAVA,
Yes.
H-A-V-A. And for the record, it's the Help America Vote Act of 2020. It's my understanding there's better than $9 million available to the state of Louisiana to do exactly what we're proposing, to improve voter registration or voter activities. So he is looking into it, and they will actively seek these funds to see if we can get that assistance. Two issues: funding, and I hope we can get this through HAVA, and two, identifying a site or sites to make this happen. So I commend you for bringing this to our attention, and hopefully we can get this thing resolved soon so we can have it in the very near future.
Yeah, if I could, I think doing this expeditiously is extremely important, particularly you mentioned the funds potentially from the HAVA Act, because this would require legislation on Representative Cousson's part.
Right.
Yeah.
And just one other comment. I want to give credit to Mr. Doyle from the Mayor President's Office with ADA, who has
Yes.
also been actively involved in giving us guidance in terms of ADA issues and so forth. So thanks, and hopefully we can move on this and
Okay.
get Ms. Menard involved with us as well.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker, Mike Walden, followed by Nell Hahn.
Good evening. My name is Michael Walden. I live in the city of Lafayette and in the parish of Lafayette. Tonight, first, I wanted to thank you for taking the job of being on the council. It must take a lot of hours to be a councilman, and I really appreciate your hard work, and I appreciate the mayor for coming here and dedicating a big part of his career to being our mayor president. I wanted to talk about two related issues very briefly. First, I don't know if you've ever ridden the bus, but the Lafayette transportation system, they call it LTS. I'm just so impressed by how comfortable the buses are. They don't stink. They run on natural gas, so they're not like the old buses I used to ride. And the seats are comfortable. They're not padded, but they are comfortable. And the price isn't all that high. If you're a senior like myself, you can ride for 50 cents. So I think they're great. The one thing that I would complain about on it is that you don't have enough routes, and it's difficult a lot of times to get somewhere. For myself, you know, I'm in, I suppose, a more privileged class, and I call an Uber when I can't get the bus. So that's not a problem, but I know for many people, they ride for hours trying to get places. I met a man on the bus who was just coming back from trying to get to the driver's license bureau to get his ID. He didn't drive, but he had to get his ID up there, and he told me he'd taken 2 hours on the bus trying to get there, and then he had to cross Interstate 49 because the bus doesn't go on the other side of the road, and then he got stopped by a state policeman because he was crossing the interstate. So there are some problems too, and the app is really good. It could use improvement like anything, but I really like the app, and it shows the GPS position of the buses when they're coming. That's beautiful. And so, in summary on the bus, I would like to ask each one of you and the mayor president, ride the bus once a month. Just go out and catch it. You'll be going somewhere. Check and find a route that's going where you're going, and ride the bus. You'll meet some of your constituents on the bus, and you'll find out how well and how sometimes not so well the bus system runs. Second thing I'd like to say is, when you go to early vote this year, ride the bus. It is really difficult to get early voting on the bus, so you'll probably have to get a transfer. and then you can get within about a block and a half of the early voting if you get on the right route. So it's really difficult. It would be so much easier for a lot of us if early voting was at the Rosa Parks location, so that all the buses go there, and you could early vote riding the bus. I do support the League of Women Voters appeal to either open a second location or move the location to something that's more convenient. In 2016, I stood in line on the stairwell, and I'm a pretty healthy old guy, but I saw people in that line that shouldn't have been standing in a stairway for such a long time. And if one of those people had fallen down the steps, I would imagine that the city would have quite a liability, or the parish, I guess, would have the liability. It's really not appropriate to have us all line up on the stairway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, Nell Hahn. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Rubin.
Go ahead, Mr. Rubin. You got the floor.
Okay, I want to say thank you for bringing that comment up. I know about the buses. I can recall when we were younger, they used to give the kids passes to be able to ride the bus all over the place, and we had fun. So I think I'm going to take you up on that and ride the bus every now and then just to go wherever, you know, because we need to know what's going on and understand what our constituents are going through. So thank you.
Okay, next speaker, please.
Next speaker, Nell Hahn, followed by the final speaker, Matthew Humphrey.
My name's Nell Hahn, and I'm a member of the League of Women Voters, and I'm here in support of their request that the council and the registrar of voters provide for at least one alternate site for early voting, or relocate the early voting site to an accessible and location. And I served on the Mayor President's Disability Awareness Committee for 6 years, and I just got off in November because I was term limited, but I stay interested in disability issues. I worked for an organization that worked on disability rights for everybody in the state. And when the league first brought these problems up in 2016, the Disability Awareness Committee was made aware of it, and we definitely support that request. It had been brought to our attention that there were a lot of people with disabilities that had a very difficult time when it gets crowded, which isn't all that often. But for the large elections, like the presidential election, it become very crowded. It becomes dangerous for those people. And I went to the meeting of the Disability Affairs Committee yesterday, and there were people, you know, I brought this up, and there were people voicing concern and saying that even though our tax assessor, Mr. Como, has seen to it that there were some improvements made to the site because it didn't remotely comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And there have been some improvements, and those are very welcome, and they were long overdue. But they're not going to be sufficient when there is a lot of crowds there. They're really not going to be sufficient to offset the difficulties of that third floor site with that very small, slow elevator and a very crowded stairwell. And the additional parking problems that have come about. I mean, it's always been horrible to park downtown, but now it's pretty much impossible. So anyway, we support this and hope that the Parish Council will take the leadership and get something done by November, or well, October. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Final speaker, Mr. Chair, Matthew Humphrey.
All right, before he comes up, I just want to say that, you know, working with Charlene and the League of Women Voters, I don't think this Parish Council doesn't want to help out. We definitely would like, we know we need it. We definitely see the need. Talking to Charlene, it just boils down to funding. Where we at on this council, I think if we had the money to do it, I think if administration knew where the money was at, we would definitely try to get it done right away. But I can assure you that this council will work with administration and try to figure out how we can do it. With a parish general fund of $50,000, and you're looking at ongoing cost of anywhere from 25 to 30,000. It pretty much has to come from the general fund. So just to let people know that this council here would love to fix it, and I think we will. It's just a matter of finding the funding and how do we get there is kind of where we're at this position. So, Councilman Carlson, you have the floor.
I'd like to echo what Councilman Nakhan said. About 3-4 weeks ago, I met with Mayor Ray Bork of Broussard, Mayor Ken Ritter of Youngsville, a few others just to discuss this option. We see the need, especially in that area. You have 2 of the fastest growing cities in the state, a huge population increase, and it makes it really difficult to make it across the parish, stand in line, vote, drive back, especially if you're trying to do it in the middle of the week while you're at work or on your lunch break. But that's really what it came down to, is that as soon as I left that meeting, I called Ms. Toops and our CFO, and I said, hey, it looks like it costs, it's $18,000 to get up and running, and then it's $25,000 we estimated per year. And again, we have $50,000 left in the general fund, and so we're looking at other options to make that happen. I know Councilman Gilbo spoke to potentially receiving some state funds, and so we're checking into that. And something we'll need to check with our registrar of voters is if it would be possible to even have the early voting site at a different location, even if we're not adding a second location yet, potentially having it at another location that would be more accessible. You have sure.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Well, we won't, no.
I apologize.
We'll have to keep going, but I appreciate it. But you, after the meeting, you can definitely give it to Councilman Carlson. Or if you want to have a question or something you want to give to the clerk, and she'll get it to us. Either one, okay? All right, I'll move on to Mr. Humphrey. You have the floor, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. My name is Matthew Humphrey. I'm a resident of Youngsville. I haven't met most of the council. I've met Councilman Nakhan. I've not had the opportunity to meet Mayor President Guillory. So I'm really only here to deliver a letter verbally that I sent to the Mayor President's office late last week in response to an article that that was published by The Current that Christian Mader wrote. In it, it was revealed that the Mayor President had signed a pledge during his campaign, which included in part elements that will directly impact the lives of local LGBTQ+ community. While I understand you likely had no choice but to pledge or risk losing support, I'd like to find a way to work together to avoid alienating a minority community that pays taxes and are building lives here, despite how difficult that is at times. I'm going to bring up a couple of specifics and a couple of quotes. First, drag queen story time. It's old news. With the creation of PFLAG Lafayette after that mess, we've been too focused networking to put on another. As a fiscal conservative and a constitutional attorney, I'm sure that you know what a waste of taxpayer money that was. The First Amendment guarantees drag queens can read in libraries, even in Lafayette, Louisiana, so we really just should move on. Second, Pride Month and Lafayette's traditional values. Let's call a spade a spade. Traditional values is a dog whistle term for wishing queer people didn't exist. The Current's interview says, supporting Pride Month isn't a government function to you, but telling the library to stay away from LGBTQ+ matters is. Knowing you previously argued a lesbian marriage case to the Louisiana Supreme Court, I'd hoped you'd skip this page from your predecessor. But a pledge. Let's be clear, you pledged to oppose an entire demographic based on who they love and who they are, pledged to indirectly harm young queer kids who are already harming themselves in outrageous numbers, and pledged to limit economic opportunities by continuing support for a mindset that progressive companies won't expand into and that drives talent elsewhere. Quote, it's needlessly provocative, a fruitless discussion. There's no good that comes from this. I'm saying I support equality, marry who you want, I don't care, focus on priorities. The notion that a non-binding resolution that costs nothing would be so passionately dismissed shows how badly it's needed. Real people have been fighting greater than 50 years for rights that you got from your DNA. Imagine something so distinct to your identity, the very way that you love, being called needlessly provocative, bearing no fruit, no good comes of it. There is a quiet coalition building of individuals devoted to saving queer kids through outreach, the school board, church groups, social events. Most importantly, we're just letting them know that they're seen. That's all a Pride resolution would do. It'd be provocative enough to tell a queer kid that they belong, they're not needless, they do bear fruit, good things do come from them, even if they don't fit within what a vocal minority calls traditional. Quote, I support equality. Do what you got to do. It's not the role of the government. I want government to focus on economic initiatives. That last bit struck me, the part of your pledge I referenced above that actively works against economic development. In the letter that I sent to your office, I'm going to skip a little bit, I did send a link to some research done by the UCLA School of Law that highlights the economic impacts based on the inclusion and exclusion of LGBTQ+ citizens. One last quote. I'm not going to avoid change just for the sake of it's uncomfortable or it might be scary. So scary and uncomfortable as it may be for both of us, your administration clearly needs someone who knows what it's like to be on the receiving end of your type of support. And it's a type of support historically available in Lafayette. And who can help you build an administration with the type of support that was needed. You were duly elected to represent me and the LGBTQ+ community, and it is in our collective best interest to find commonality. So my letter was a formal offer to assist your administration on LGBTQ+ matters, or any matters that might intersect with the community. I don't need a title, I don't need, and I offer it at no cost to the taxpayer. If you want to put me in touch with Mr. Harvin, Minority Affairs, we can do that. I'll even buy the first round if you want to chat after hours sometimes. I think Mr. Knockhead can tell you that I'm not so bad in person. So that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
No other speakers, Mr. Chair.
No other speakers, okay. Moving right along, we're going to go ahead and move to discussion item. Jeremy, can you please read?
Parish millages, correctional center, courthouse complex, and juvenile detention facility.
Okay. I'll go ahead and take the lead on that, and I'm going to go ahead and have Ms. Lori Toops' mic's hot. As a parish council, talking to my fellow parish council members, one of the things that we want to address this year is making sure that we're bringing education to the public and informing them on exactly what is the millages that the parish council is going to be looking at, what we're going to be in charge of overseeing, how does it operate, what's the expenses, and basically let us know where we have surpluses, or where we have shortfalls, or where we have inefficiencies within the system that we currently operating in. It's something that this parish council is definitely, everybody that ran, everybody that was in office before always knows that the parish was always lacking behind. And so now that we have 5 council members that are focused on turning the parish around and trying to get some efficiency and figure out where we at, how does the millages work, we're going to be bringing some series of meetings, discussion items here to educate, 1, the public, 2, catch administration and the council up to speed on what the millages are paying for and how does it operate and how does it look? Does it look good? Does it look bad? Kind of tell us where we at. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and turn the mic over to our CFO, Ms. Lori Toops, who has we have a presentation. I don't know, it doesn't go up here though, huh? It does? All right, cool deal. All right, you have the floor.
Mr. Knockhan, I want to thank you for this opportunity to present this information. This is information I've long since wanted to provide you, to look at these special dedicated taxes at the fund level. Looking at it when we do our budget presentations, sometimes these details get lost in the weeds. So for everyone here, I was asked to provide a summary presentation as to not take up everyone's time at the meeting, but I am available for questions, so you can email questions, give me a call. But since I was asked to provide an overview and a summary, I intentionally did not bring details of capital projects and that type of stuff. So if you have more questions, I welcome that. It's good for you to learn and understand how your tax dollars are spent, but I might not have that information available to me here tonight. So I'm presenting 3 taxes today. The first one is on the correctional center. So what you should know about your parish-wide dedicated ad valorem taxes is that they are deposited in a single individual dedicated special revenue fund. Back in the old days, before they had modern computer systems, we opened a separate checking account for each one of these millages. But they are tracked separately. They still are tracked separately in today's age with modern computer systems. They are in their own, what we call special revenue fund. So they don't get deposited into the general fund for general spending. What's left over of these taxes at the end of the day stay in that fund and is available for use in future years if there is anything left over. Also, all parish-wide taxes are subject to homestead exemption. City taxes are not, but the parish-wide taxes are. This first tax here is the Correctional Center. It is a parish-wide millage levied at 2.06, and the revenue generated from that millage, and I rounded here, and y'all know it's hard for me to round. I like to give exact numbers. So I rounded here. We are in the middle of an audit, so we have some numbers that might be a little different from what you've seen before, but they're going to be close. And another thing to note is that of these special dedicated taxes, there's large chunks that are dedicated to capital projects. You may recall the sewer grinder for the jail a couple of meetings ago. That sewer grinder was in the budget for years. And so at the end of the year, you might find that we have money left over. I'm not projecting. In these projections, I'm estimating that every capital project that you approved would magically get complete all in this 1 year, but we know that never really happens. So the jail millage, the 2.06 mills, generates about $4.5 million in property tax. It takes a lot more than that to run the jail. So we're estimating that we have that $4.5 million. We're estimating another $6.4 million to come from the courthouse complex fund. Now remember, that would be if all the capital projects at the jail just happen to get complete this year, so that transfer might not be that high. The O&M expenses that we're estimating is $5.8 million and $5.1 million in capital expenses. If you live in a $100,000 house, you are paying $5.15 a year to fund the jail. If you live in a $300,000 house, you are paying $46.35 a year to run the jail.
Laurie?
Yes, sir.
The key word here on this slide here for people to know is the subsidy from the courthouse complex.
The subsidy from the courthouse complex with all the capital projects is $6.4 million. So we're not generating enough money from the correctional center millage to cover all the needs of the jail. Remember, the jail is an old building.
Well, if I remember back, the millage was for a 2-story jail, and we wound up building a 5-story or a 4-story or something like that.
I think it's 5.
5. So the key here is there's a dedicated millage for the jail, but it's not doing what it has to do, so we're subsidizing from another entity to make this thing work.
Right. And years ago, we had a meeting a couple weeks ago. Years ago, there might have been 3 murderers in the jail, and today there's something like 90. So, you know, the
There's
jail
more felonies, absolutely.
There's more, yeah, the population keeps growing. We did have a lot of expense of sending prisoners out of the parish, but just the increase in the jail population overall, and it's an old building. I can't stress that enough, that it's an old building, and an old jail just needs lots of work and lots of repairs.
Councilman Gilbo.
And Laurie, I think it's even bigger than what you're saying. When the jail was built, true, it was for maybe a 2-story building. It's much bigger, but we were talking about maybe 260 inmates at the time that it would house. And now, Sheriff, I think we're up to about 700 or 800 inmates, which also complicates the whole financial issue.
Okay, so this magic of me sitting at my desk might not work. Okay.
So the net result is we have 0 balance.
The jail never has any money left over at the end of the year. No, it never does. If you go back to in my budget message, you'll see each year where I talk about all the operating subsidies that is needed for the jail each year. Okay. So, of course, the operating subsidy comes from the courthouse complex fund. And I'm being very conservative on this number. I know some of the elected officials here are going to see that ending fund balance, but I'm being very conservative. I'm hoping that it ends up a little bit more than that. We are in the middle of an audit, and last year's audit is, the audit that ended October 31st is not complete, and the auditors have not made the final adjustment. So I wanted to account for that. I'm hoping that we end up to start the current fiscal year with more than $9 million, but I'm not sure if that's going to work out. The parish-wide courthouse complex millage is 2.34 mills, and it generates about $5,400,000. We're estimating that the beginning fund balance in this fund will be around $9 million, maybe a little more, because a lot of those capital projects at the courthouse have not been completed. But, so the courthouse complex will bring in, from the millage, $5.4 million, but there is some additional revenues that get deposited in that fund. And if that fund carries a balance, it'll earn interest. The interest it earns stays in that fund. I don't take that out and put it in the general fund. It stays in that fund. So that's why you see the revenue is a little bit higher than what the millage generates. The operating expenses of the courthouse complex fund are about $2 million, and we have about $3.7 million in open capital projects and $6.4 million estimated to go to the correctional center if they need that for operations and ongoing capital projects. At the end of the year, or when those capital projects are finished, if they don't need that much, we don't transfer that much. We only transfer what it needs for the jail special revenue fund to have a zero balance and not be overdrawn or in the negative. If you have a $100,000 assessed value on your house, you pay $5.85 a year for the courthouse complex. If you have a $300,000 assessed value, you pay $52.65 a year for the courthouse complex. And that'll be the little numbers in the corner if anybody gets a copy of this presentation. The next millage I was asked to include on this, once again, this millage also is
Laura, hold
in
on one
its...
second. Councilman Carlson.
At this rate, how many years do you expect until we have zero fund balance for the courthouse complex?
At this rate, it could be one, but I'm kind of hoping that we get to stretch it. I was being very
Say that again?
conservative here.
Say that again. One what?
1 year.
Yeah.
Maybe 1.5 until we are not carrying a fund balance for the courthouse complex?
Right. I'm hoping some of those capital projects move as slow as the sewer grinder, and we can stretch that out a little bit more, but we'll just have to see how that is.
There's going to be a day of reckoning.
So the next millage I was asked to address tonight is the Juvenile Detention Center. The millage for that, parish-wide millage, subject to the homestead exemption, is 1.17 mills. It generates about $2.7 million in property tax revenue. It does carry a fund balance in there, and you can see that revenues are higher than the property taxes generated, and that's because it's very expensive to house a juvenile. So if we house another parish's juvenile, we charge them a pretty penny for that. We charge them a premium rate. This is a parish-owned facility. There are other regionals around the state, but we're charging upwards to $200 a night per juvenile. So we're generating a little bit extra revenue in there, and that helps us to carry a fund balance. O&M expenses on that fund are $3.4 million, and capital expenses are estimated to be about $461. There may be some additional capital needs that you see in the budget process for the facility. That, too, is an older, aging facility. If you have a $100,000 assessed valuation, you're paying $2.93 a year to have a juvenile detention home in our parish. And if you have a $300,000 assessed value, you're paying about $26.33 a year for the juvenile detention center. Like I said, it does have a fund balance. It's generating a little bit more than what it's using, but that can go quickly as you tend to the capital needs at the facility. And that's it for the millages. Once again, these are all in their own dedicated fund. If you look at the audit, that's what I would recommend when you're looking at these things, because when you look at the budget book, it's not done by fund, but the audit, you will see a separate revenue expense for those funds, and you'll see separate balance sheets. And I'll be happy to answer anyone's questions through email, telephone calls, or whatever I can address now that you may have, but for the details, I'll have to do that at a later time.
Okay. Any council discussion? Any question? Okay. Lori, I'm going to throw this out here. One of the issues we have in government sometimes is when we have dedicated millages and that particular one is not performing, there's only one or two things you can do. You can either increase that millage or, in what we've done in the past with mosquito health unit, combine millages to where it frees up opportunity to fix maybe an issue in another area where you couldn't fix before by consolidating the millages. Is there another parish that you're aware of, or where you worked in previous, have they ever combined a correctional center, courthouse complex, juvenile detention, and combine all of that and make it one millage to where if animal control is doing their job, their budget, but they have some surplus, but then another area we might need some help. Has that ever been done, consolidating millages to address this? Because we have a jail issue. We're subsidizing from the courthouse complex, which we're going to run out eventually. Then you have the juvenile detention that is being successful, where other parishes have cut out their juvenile detention facilities and stopped doing it altogether. What would that look like with capital projects, with the issues that we're facing and the shortfalls? As a CFO, does that an opportunity or a possibility that this parish council should look at in regards to, and I'd like the mayor president to chime in as well, on it would not be a fix-all for sure, but in a short term, would it be almost like putting a Band-Aid in until we can figure out how to fix those issues?
Out of the three funds we looked at tonight, the only one with a considerable fund balance is the JDH, and it was only $3 million. It wasn't, and it's not projected to grow, to be growing in that scenario. Could you build a new JDH home and add more beds? Because it seems to be lucrative to go ahead and house those prisoners, but is that something you want to do? That might not be something that you want to do. We're mandated to provide a jail. We are mandated to provide the services at the courthouse. We're not mandated to have a juvenile detention center, although if we have to take our juveniles and send them elsewhere, we will be paying a pretty penny to house those at another facility, because juveniles
it's
are very
almost like
expensive.
the jail. When our jail's full and we have somebody that needs to be here in Lafayette Parish and we have no room, then they have to go to another parish, then the parish is on the hook for paying the higher rate plus the medical and everything else. So in the juvenile, if we're full and we have a local juvenile person that needs to go in and there's no room, then we got to send them elsewhere. So the parish is getting hit on both ends. But I know Mr. Bobby and him do a great job of the juvenile, and I've had several conversations with him on how important it is and the needs that he has. Doors need to be replaced. I mean, so we have some issues. I just, I feel like we should have that discussion and see if consolidating all of these under one umbrella and having each entity work together and see what we can get done priority-wise and see if we can get something accomplished. I don't know if it's going to fix everything. And the last thing I want to do is make it a feel-good story. And at the end of the day, nothing's improving in the jail, nothing's improving in the courthouse, nothing's improving in the juvenile. I mean, I'm just open discussion. That's why I wanted to bring all of these millages, and I want the public to see what we're faced against. So
I think you're off to a good start by looking at these on the fund level. Throwing in that big budget book, looking at those massive numbers, and not looking at what a particular fund has, how much money it has coming in, and what does it have to do, I think is the right way to look at it. So I'm happy to do this, and
okay. I've seen how well the health unit in that was able to do, and I just don't know, combining this jail is the biggest hook right now for the parish, and we're subsidizing, and crime is what it is. Like you said, back in the day, Sheriff had given us a presentation, maybe 9 felonies. Now we got 90. I mean, so it's going to get worse. And before long, people are going to want somebody to get arrested, and then there's no room for them, and they out right back on the street. So that's Councilman Carlson. I'll give you the floor.
Yeah, I'm not sure who to direct it to. How many kids are served in the juvenile detention center each year or each month?
Bobby, you or
Good evening. I'm Bobby Cormier. I'm the administrator of the Lafayette Juvenile Detention Home. Last year, I think in the parish, there was something like 900 kids, almost 1,000 kids arrested in the parish. Out of that 900, approximately 280 kids came to the juvenile detention home.
Thank you.
Mayor President.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And, before I make my comments, I would like to recognize, we have a lot of elected officials in the audience. If you could stand up or raise your hand or to be acknowledged, please. I appreciate it. Yes. Had some members from Broussard, our municipalities, our judges, our tax collector,
Sheriff.
assessor. He's the collector. I always butcher that. I apologize, Mr. Como. and Sheriff. Which one do y'all like better, tax collector or assessor? Sorry, I had to. I'm in Robin Hood mode. Okay, thank you. But this should show you that, look, this is a combined effort that this process involves. And, I really applaud the leadership of our parish council. I genuinely mean that, to the chair, vice chair, our members, each member. I know how hard they work behind the scenes. And this approach, it's refreshing to me just as a constituent. And as Lori, I'll piggyback off what you're saying. It's good to look at each fund. It's good to look at each millage. So thank you for bringing this, and I look forward to the future as we tackle each one of these millages and ask the questions, quite frankly, that you've been asking. My thoughts are probably in line with what your intent is, Mr. Nakan, and that is to see how we can better spend the taxpayers' money. I think the questions that you're asking are very objective and things that we need to address. So my position is very simple. I'm open to any options, any ideas out there other than raising taxes. And I know that we will work together to make sure that we're spending the money that we have in the most cost-effective way. So I appreciate you.
No problem. Thank you. Yeah, it's going to take for this parish council to be successful. It's going to take all of those entities within these millages to come together and figure out a way how do we do it. At the end of the day, I'm not sure what it's going to take, but we have to exhaust all options. We have to go through everything first with a good comb and make sure that the public understands this parish council is only going to be good for maybe about a year or 2 years. If we have no funding, we can't get the extra voting poll, we can't get this done, we can't get that done. So then you have 5 good-looking guys up here with our hands tied and just holding a meeting, just to hold a meeting. So I didn't run or get elected to do nothing. I want to better my parish and better my community and help my sheriff and help my judges and help the courthouse and help the juvenile detention. And, so we got some work to do, but this is the first step of bringing it up front and getting out there. And the more the media puts out the facts and puts out all the stuff that helps get the people aware of what we're faced and what we're up against. So,
Real quick, and I rounded more, I'm sure, than you did. I did some quick math. So we are taking in roughly $13.3 million between those 3 funds, and we're spending $20.4 per year. Just to put it in perspective, so we're short about $7 million per year as a whole.
today.
If capital expenditures stay the same, if operations stay the same, am I drastically off? Like I said, I did some quick rounding.
I think your math is pretty good.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, let's move to ordinance for final adoption.
Mr. Chair,
Oh, I'm sorry. What
public
happened?
comment.
Oh, you're right. Any public comment on discussion items?
Judge David Blanchette,
All right.
the only speaker.
I didn't mean to cut you off, Judge. I have so many paperwork.
I'm Judge David Blanchette with the 15th Judicial District. I just wanted to call to your attention that the poorest maintained building in this parish is the parish courthouse. If you noticed, $6.4 million is going to the jail when the tax is only taken in $5.2 million. The capital outlays being spent on the courthouse are state funds, state matching funds. So we're never consulted about what's going to be spent on the courthouse. Very little is spent on the courthouse. And so combining the taxes, with all due respect, is not really working, because the courthouse complex tax, it doesn't say jail, it says courthouse complex, but the money goes to the jail. At least this year it'll be more than 100%. The parking garage was allowed to be condemned. The money wasn't spent on that. We have 500 people on some days at the courthouse. Today, we had juries. So the point I'm trying to make is the apportionment is not there. We're not being consulted on how the money's spent. We've asked for holding cells. We've asked for all these things. We finally are getting it because Joe Robideau put it as a priority for state funds. So that's finally being funded after all these years. But parish money's not being spent on the courthouse. It's not being spent on the parking garage, to the great inconvenience of the public. So the parking garage all this time has been allowed to be condemned because this money in the courthouse complex fund didn't go to the courthouse and it didn't go to the garage. Now, I'm not saying the jail shouldn't get some of the money, but we have been on the short end of this stick for year after year. I was stuck in the elevator last week for 25 minutes. Those were refurbished elevators about 5 years ago. That's the last real capital expenditure that I can recall at the courthouse, other than just maintenance. So I'm just asking you all to take a look at this. We're not consulted, as I say. Nobody asks us. We just get what we get. So I would love to be working together on figuring something out that would be better for all the parish. And the inconvenience to the people that have to come to the courthouse with no place to park, it's really a bad circumstance. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
No, I've been on the council for 8 years. You and I have had several meetings. Look, I can tell you I got ridiculed and crucified for trying to bring and supporting going to the voters to fix the courthouse, the jail. We gave a proposition that was going to fix everything, and it got killed. You know, so the public is telling me we don't see the need for the courthouse. It's not that bad. I know it's bad. You know it's bad. So, you know, my goal is to make sure we bring everybody together and figure this thing out together. But we have to work together, because at the end of the day, you're right. I mean, the sheriff needs his millage is unperforming. Yours has enough, but we're subsidizing from you. I mean, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Absolutely.
And that's not always an effective thing to do for a long period of time.
It's not been working at the courthouse.
Exactly. So you have my word that I will bring the sheriff. We'll have a meeting.
And
We'll
we're
have to
happy
get
to work
together.
with everyone. You know, we're happy to work with everyone. But as I say, at present, this tax is being cut up in a way we're not consulted on.
Yeah.
We just get what we get. So
Well,
I'd like to see that different in the future.
We'll try to make that happen.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilman Rubin.
Excuse me.
Judge.
Hey, look, we understand your pain, and, excuse me, and we're working towards that. I think we're on the right path right now, starting tonight, with educating the public. So when we do come out there, when we submit a program, the public will support, because that's the first step into getting things done. The public don't understand, they'll shoot it down. So moving forward, as you said, we're going to continue working with everyone, educating our constituents, and hopefully the next time we bring something up, we'll be able to get it done so that where everyone can eat when they come to the table.
Sure, absolutely. And people don't realize the parish courthouse is for the parish. It's not the Lafayette courthouse. It's where all your public records are kept. It's where all your property records are kept. It's an extremely important building. It's the justice center of the parish. It's where your felonies are prosecuted. So it's a crucial building. It's one of your three branches of government, needs a decent building in which to operate. So we educate our children to become professionals to work in a stinky, outdated, poorly maintained courthouse, and I think that's just a shame. For a parish this size, with the kind of money that Lafayette Parish has, I think it's just a shame that that's going on. So, again, we're happy to work with anyone, any place, anywhere, anytime, meet with anyone and talk about it.
All right, thank you. And like I said, we'll try to work on that and make things better for everyone.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Judge,
Yes, sir.
before I cut it off, I want to commend the sheriff, because the sheriff and I is coming to the council, and we're working on something that should be coming that's going to help save the parish some money. So it's going to take the sheriff doing his part. It's going to take judges. We're going to have to get together, because we're going to have to make it work. But I can tell you that we are working, and the sheriff department and Colonel, we are on the process of helping the parish save some money and relieving some money for the jail. And so we're working on that as one step, and we got to bring you
I
guys in.
understand. And
So
we have no beef with the sheriff.
I hope
It's not his jail, it's your jail,
I hear you. No.
right?
You're right. You're right.
It's
So-
your jail. It's your courthouse. It's
Yeah.
not my courthouse, it's your courthouse.
No, you're right. You're right. And Lafayette Parish definitely deserves to have something to be proud for, and we do have a great parish. I just wanted to let you know and let the public know that the sheriff is looking at ways to help relieve this parish in regards to,
We appreciate that.
so we want to do the same with you guys, is what I'm saying. We want to bring
Sure.
everybody in, figure
Sure.
out how we can make it happen. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any other public?
Did you want to say what millages will be presented during the next meeting?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Real quick, just for public announcement, March the 3rd, Parish Council meeting, we will be having the Public Health Unit Maintenance, the Animal Shelter and Care Center, Mosquito Abatement, and the Cultural Economy. That'll be the next 4 that will be doing a presentation on March the 3rd. We'll be going over fund balance and kind of what we did here to give the public an overview of how those are performing and what's going on. Any other speaker?
No, sir.
Okay, let's move to ordinance for final adoption. This is a public hearing. The blue sheets are available for anyone wishing to address the council. The 5-minute rule does apply. Chairman, can you please read?
Parish Ordinance 6, 2020. An ordinance of the Lafayette Parish Council amending the fiscal year 1920 operating budget of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government by increasing revenues in the amount of $2.4 million in hazard mitigation grant program funds received from the Federal Emergency Management Agency through the Louisiana Governor's Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Preparedness in the amount of $560,000 in statewide flood control program funds received from the Louisiana Department of Transportation and Development, reassigning $240,000 to be received from the City of Scott for general improvements to Coulee-Ile-de-Con for the match funding of the awarded project and appropriating within the Community Development Department.
Need a motion in a second? So moved. Motion by Councilman Gilbo, second by Councilman Carlson. Any council discussion? Seeing none. Any public comment, Ms.?
No, sir.
Okay. Please call for the vote.
District 1,
Yes.
District 2,
Yes.
District 3,
Yes.
District 4,
Yes.
District 5.
Yes.
Motion to adopt is approved.
Okay. Moving right along to introductory ordinance. Chairman, please read.
Parish Ordinance 8, 2020, an ordinance of the Lafayette Parish Council amending the fiscal year 1920 operating budget and adjusting the manning tables of the Lafayette City Parish Consolidated Government by increasing the budgeted pay rate for an adopt foster rescue supervisor within the Animal Shelter and Care Center Division of the Executive Department.
Okay. Need a motion in a second? Motion by Councilman Tabor. Need a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Gilbo. Council discussion. Councilman Carlson, you have the floor.
Ms. Stoops, can you confirm if this position, we had talked a little bit about it, received the 5% pay increase a few months back?
This is a new position that was created in the current budget, and because it was vacant when we gave the 5% increase, the 5% was not added to this position.
Okay. I'm going to pull it up. I wanted you to explain something for me. So in the ordinance, I think there's a line that says that the operating budget of the City Parish Consolidated Government shall not be affected due to the fact that there is sufficient unexpended, unencumbered salary appropriations to cover the hourly rate. Can you explain that a little bit? It says there's sufficient unexpended, unencumbered salary appropriations to cover this hourly rate adjustment.
There is available funding in the Animal Control Fund to cover that adjustment.
Okay.
And
Robert,
just
can
for
you speak to what you told
clarification,
me earlier?
Robert Benoit,
Yes.
Chief of Staff, just for clarification, this is not a pay raise for an individual. The rate of pay for the individual will not change. The individual is currently an animal caretaker supervisor who is moving to a new position that was created in the budget effective November 1, adoption foster rescue supervisor. So she's transferring to the new position at her same rate of pay. It is not an increase. Because the new position was created November 1st, and no, there wasn't an incumbent, the 5% pay raise didn't apply, so there's not enough money for her to keep the current
So
salary.
if her pay rate is not changing in the documentation we received, it says old rate, $20.24 an hour, new rate, $21.14 an hour.
That's a budgeted rate. That is
Okay.
not changing the pay rate of the employee.
Okay, and that's why it says no
It
fiscal
was
impact.
confusing, and the memo could have been.
And we talked about that.
Yeah, the
I'd
memo
certainly
could have
like
been.
more information. I just wanted to clarify that for
Yeah.
everyone. It shows old rate, new rate.
Yeah,
but I
it's the
wanna make sure-
budgeted rate.
Right,
It's not a pay raise for the individual.
okay.
Thank you.
Councilman Gilbo, you have the floor.
I hesitated to even give it a second tonight, and the reason being is I didn't feel like I even had enough documentation to consider this item tonight. It's very shallow in terms of the amount of information that we received, and I'm really struggling going forth based on what I have heard. Like Councilman Carlson has indicated, it seemed like one of the justifications was budget availability would be on unexpended, unencumbered funds. And that seemed like that was the issue that was being put forth. I don't buy that. Again, I think we need to be accountable. We need to look across the board and make sure that the impact that this is going to have even down into the future doesn't exacerbate the whole budget situation. I would hope that we can be given better information, better justification for these kind of positions into the future.
Madam President?
And Mr. Gilbo, I can definitely empathize with your position, and I will concede that the memo that we attached to the introductory ordinance was probably a little vague, and we can supplement that. I would ask the council, because this is on introductory, to pass it and go forward with the final adoption in 2 weeks, which would give us a little bit of time to amend the memo, which would give you a little bit more information, and also we can have further discussion in 2 weeks.
Okay. Mr. Gilbo, you did? Okay. Councilman AB?
I would also concur with Mr. Gilbo. You know, that's why I know they was waiting for someone to second it. I couldn't either. You know, we need some more information. And we're gonna consider passing it tonight, but for the next 2 weeks, we would appreciate it if you would give us a little more information, so that way we can make a better judgment on what's going on. And in the future, anything else like this, you know, give us a little information, man, because we don't want to get left in the dark.
Okay. Councilman Gilbo?
And again, I don't want to indicate that I'm against this, but I just feel like we need to make sure that we have the full scope, that has been properly vetted at all ends, and that we have it properly documented in terms of budget issues.
Madam President?
Again, empathize with all of your assessments on that, and from our administration, you know, we apologize for the lack of information on this memo. I think our actions have spoken for themselves as far as the detail that we have provided in the past, but we're not perfect, so introductory, within 2 weeks, we'll have more information. Also invite any questions that the council has or the public has in regards to this ordinance. It's a good thing we're doing over there at the animal shelter, but we could have done better in our memo, so I appreciate your assessment.
Okay. All right. Any public comment, Ms. Williams?
No, sir.
Okay. Please call the vote.
District 2?
Yes.
District 3?
Yes.
District 4?
Yes.
District 5?
Yes.
District 1?
Yes.
Motion to introduce is approved.
Okay. I'd like to adjourn the Parish Council meeting, and we'll get started right quick with the Lafayette City Parish Council joint meeting. We'll convene the joint meeting.